The age of Chaucer is relatively short, focusing mainly on Edward III's reign, which included the lengthy French Wars. It also covers the rise of Richard II in 1377, the significant event of Richard's deposition in 1399, leading to the establishment of the Lancastrian dynasty. From a literary perspective, the period is marked by notable social and intellectual developments. These include the devastating Black Death, which caused poverty, social unrest, and peasant revolts. There was a growing spirit of inquiry that criticized the church's practices seen in the teachings of figures like Wycliffe and Lollards, as well as Langland's strong condemnations. The English language during this period became more standardized, primarily adopting the East Midland dialect, which was prevalent in the capital and universities. Other dialects, except for Scottish, gradually faded from literature. A fusion of French and English occurred, forming the basis of what we now recognize as Standard English, exemplified in the writings of Chaucer. A noticeable shift towards a more critical outlook emerged during this time. There was increased scrutiny of societal norms and less blind acceptance of established conventions. While Romance still had influence, it was starting to wane, with Chaucer even mocking it. Instead, there was a growing interest in drama, hinting at developments to come. Additionally, the era saw a decline in anonymous authorship, with more works being attributed to specific writers, including significant figures who shaped the literary landscape. The era marked the beginnings of English prose style. Earlier attempts were experimental or imitative, but now writers like Mandeville and Mallory developed original and distinctive prose. English was becoming more suitable for prose expression as it settled into a standardized form. Latin and French, once dominant in prose, were losing ground, particularly due to the increasing demand for an English Bible. Notably, Scottish literature gained prominence during this period, with figures like Barber emerging as significant writers. Barber's contributions marked the beginning of a tradition that would later influence a powerful group of poets. Geoffrey Chaucer's life is mostly known through historical documents and some personal remarks in his poems. He was likely born in 1340 in London. He began his career in the household of the Duke of Clarence's wife in 1357 and later served in the military abroad, where he was captured. Afterward, he joined the royal household, receiving pensions and favors from the king, particularly when Richard II took the throne in 1377. Chaucer was also involved in diplomatic missions, including a trip to Italy in 1378. Though he faced financial struggles, likely due to his patron John of Gaunt leaving for Spain in 1386, he experienced a resurgence of prosperity later in life. He holds the distinction of being the first poet laid to rest in what is now known as Poets' Corner in Westminster Abbey. Chaucer's poems can be divided into three stages: the French, Italian, and English, with each stage showing different influences. The earliest French-influenced poems imitate French styles and are considered clumsy and immature. The longest of these is the Roman of the Rose, based on a French work. Other poems from this period include the Book of Duchess, written in 1369, the Complaint unto Pitt, and ABC, and the Complaint of Mars. In the Italian influence stage, Chaucer's skill improves. Works like Annelida and Arcade and the Parliament of Fowls demonstrate technical advancement and originality. Troilus and Cresside, adapted from Boccaccio, showcases Chaucer's depth in character portrayal, particularly in the complex figures of Cresside and Pandarus. The poem is regarded as one of his best narrative works, featuring skilled rhyme and profound emotional depth. The House of Fame follows the dream allegory genre, where Chaucer witnesses fame seeking individuals in a dream. The legend of good women initially aimed to tell tales of virtuous women but was left incomplete, featuring skillful narrative and the first use of heroic couplets in English poetry. In the third stage of Chaucer's work, his greatest accomplishment is the Canterbury Tales. Though some individual tales may have been written slightly earlier, while Chaucer may have drawn inspiration from Boccaccio for the overall concept, the tales are distinctly English in their execution. The poem revolves around 29 pilgrims, including Chaucer himself, who meet at the Tabard Inn in Southwark to journey to Canterbury. These pilgrims represent a diverse range of characters, from a knight to a humble ploughman, and are vividly depicted in the masterful prologue. To pass the time on their pilgrimage, each pilgrim tells two tales on the way to Canterbury and two on the return, resulting in what could have been a vast collection of over 100 tales. However, Chaucer completed only 20 and left 4 unfinished. Despite its incompleteness, the Canterbury Tales is a rich tapestry of humor, pathos, narrative, and dialogue. Most tales are written in decasyllabic or heroic couplets, with a few exceptions such as Chaucer's own Tale of Melibœus and Parson's Tale, which are in prose. Several short poems, including The Lack of Steadfastness and The Complaint of Chaucer to His Empty Purse, are attributed to this stage of Chaucer's work. During his lifetime, Chaucer gained such renown as a poet that many works were later falsely attributed to him. The examples include The Flower and the Leaf, a dream allegory, and The Court of Love. However, it is now established that these poems were not authored by Chaucer. Chaucer's prose tales, namely the Tale of Melibœus and the Parson's Tale, are not considered his most successful works. Both lack engaging style and are filled with tedious moral lessons. However, compared to earlier prose writings, they do show improvement in sentence structure and vocabulary richness. Chaucer's other prose works include an early translation of Boethius and a treatise on the astrolabe, which he wrote to teach his son Lewis about the popular astronomical instrument of the time. Chaucer's poetry holds a unique position in the literature of his time, as he was the first major poet without any significant competition for centuries. He also paved the way for a succession of great literary figures to come. His keen power of observation is a standout trait, likely influenced by his diverse interactions with people from all walks of life. This keen observation is reflected in his vivid description of characters, manners, and places. Chaucer's skill in description relies on lively presentation and judicious selection of details. His descriptions of people, manners, and places are marked by beauty, impressiveness, and humor, even in common scenes like spring mornings or flowery gardens. In terms of humor, Chaucer's work stands out for its variety, ranging from kindly and patronizing to broad and satirical. His humor is often aimed at human weaknesses but is generally good-natured and well-intended. Though less emphasized, Chaucer's poetry also contains moments of pathos reflecting a humane and genuine sentiment as seen in tales like The Prioresses or The Legend of Good Women. As a storyteller, Chaucer's narrative style is characterized by a unique blend of complexity and speed. While his stories may have weaknesses common to his time, such as long speeches and unnecessary explanations, they are often brisk, direct, and lively. Chaucer's contributions to poetic technique are notable, particularly his use of the decasyllabic lines and stanzaic forms like the Chaucerian rhyme royal. Though not renowned for lyrical poetry, he demonstrates skill in shorter forms like roundels and ballads. William Langland, also known as Langley, is an early writer whose work, The Vision of William concerning Piers the Ploughman, has been subject to modern scrutiny. The poem exists in three forms: A, B, and C texts. The A text is considered Langland's original work, while B and C are believed to be later additions by another poet. Langland was likely born in Shropshire around 1332, and the vision of Piers the Ploughman occurred in 1362 on the Malvern Hills. The poem recounts Langland's vision of a field filled with people, leading into allegorical scenes involving figures like Duvel, Dubet, and Lady Mead. Piers the Ploughman emerges as a messianic figure, restoring balance and exposing the faults of the church while highlighting the struggles of common people. Langland's portrayal of peasant life is vivid and sympathetic, contrasting with Chaucer's more affluent characters. The style of Langland's poem is characterized by sober energy, intense seriousness, and austere simplicity. It revives Old English rhymeless meter with alliteration as the basis of the line. Despite its Old English form, the vocabulary includes French elements similar to Chaucer's writing. John Gower, whose birth date is unknown, passed away in 1408. He belonged to a well-off family in Kent and was actively involved in both politics and literary endeavours of his time. He was laid to rest in London. Gower's significant works reflect the diverse state of English literature during his era. His first poem, Speculum Meditantis, in French and was lost until its rediscovery in 1895. The second, Vox Clamandis, is in Latin. The third, Confessio Amandis, is in English, written at the command of the king. In this last work, Gower employs allegorical settings and discusses the seven deadly sins through various anecdotes showcasing his storytelling prowess. While his narrative style can be diffuse, he occasionally demonstrates brisk and competent storytelling. The meter he employs is the octosyllabic couplet, known for its smoothness and fluency. John Barber, born around 1316 in Aberdeenshire, is the first notable Scottish poet. He received education at both Oxford and Paris. His major work, The Prose, spans 20 books and 13,000 lines, chronicling Scotland's struggle for independence from 1286 until the death and burial of Robert the Bruce's heart in 1332. Despite containing some legendary elements and inaccuracies, the poem is a significant contribution to Scottish heroic literature. Sir John Mandeville is the English name given to Jehan de Mandeville, who authored a French book of travels between 1357 and 1371. Though the English version claimed that Sir John Mandeville, a knight from St. Albans who supposedly travelled in 1322, wrote it, modern scholars doubt his existence. The real author is believed to be Jehan de Bougagon, who died in Liege in 1372. The Travels is now understood to be a compilation from various popular travel accounts, including those of Friar Orderic, Armenian Hetom, and Marco Polo. Despite some original content, the book is praised for its charming style, filled with incredible descriptions and anecdotes presented with eagerness. The prose style is sweet, clear, and occasionally colloquial, with skillfully crafted short narratives scattered throughout the text. John Wycliffe, also known as Wycliffe, was born around 1320 in Yorkshire. He received his education at Oxford, became a priest, and later held the position of rector at Lutterworth in Leicestershire. Wycliffe was vocal in condemning the widespread abuses within the church during his time, which caused him to be involved in ecclesiastical conflicts. Despite his controversial views, he avoided severe punishment due to the support of influential allies and passed away peacefully in 1384. He authored numerous Latin books and English tracts, with his English writing characterized by a vigorous and straightforward style, though lacking polish. Sir Thomas Malory, whose exact date of death is uncertain but believed to be around 1471, is best known for his work Morte the Author. Little is known about Malory except for what was mentioned in Caxton's preface, the first printer of Morte the Author. Malory is credited with compiling the French Arthurian romances into a single prose work filled with detailed narratives and dialogues. Despite its diverse sources, the book maintains a consistent tone of dignity and chivalry, showcasing Malory's skillful blending of dialogue and narrative. The style of Morte the Author is marked by its clear and poetic sensitivity, establishing Malory as a significant figure in the development of English prose. During the Chaucerian age, poetry underwent significant advancements, while prose also saw notable developments. Religious and love-themed lyric poetry continued to evolve during this period, with anonymous poets contributing to the genre. Notable pieces include The Nut Brown Maid and carols. The traditional ballads such as Teviches and Robin Hood poems gained popularity as a form of entertainment, especially in the North. Ballads typically dealt with themes like love, local legends, or religious stories, using simple language and alternating verse patterns. Allegorical poetry became prevalent, serving as a concrete way to convey moral and religious lessons. This method appealed to both lay and ecclesiastical audiences, with Chaucer himself incorporating allegorical elements into his works. The Canterbury Tales by Chaucer exemplifies narrative poetry. Despite common weaknesses such as lengthy speeches and irrelevant episodes, works like Chaucer's display shrewd observation, humor, and brisk narration. Though still popular, metrical romance was declining in favor, especially among the lower classes, who preferred ballads. The rise of fablia, short French tales with realistic and satirical themes, influenced the style of tales. English prose expanded notably during this period. The Travels of Mandeville represented a departure, being a prose work for amusement rather than instruction. The translation of the Bible, often attributed to Wycliffe, and John of Trevisa's prose version of Higden's Polychronicon are significant works. Civic records and letters by individuals like the Pastons, Sellis, Stoners demonstrated a growing command of the English language in various sections of society. These writings, devoid of stylistic ornamentation, vividly depicted everyday life. The development of literary style during this period saw significant changes in both poetry and prose. English poetry, largely influenced by Chaucer, leaned towards simplicity in meter. Complicated stanzas were less common, with shorter verses like Rhyme Royal gaining popularity. The use of three-syllable feet increased, adding flexibility to the verse structure. There was a revival of alliteration, a feature from Old English verse, seen notably in poems like Winner and Worcester and Piers Plowman. While initially prominent, alliteration later became merely an embellishment rather than a foundational aspect of meter. Poets showed a preference for ornate French and classical terms, as seen in Chaucer's early works and Gower's Confessio Amandus. However, Langland and ballads opted for simpler language. The state of prose remained relatively immature, but there was improvement in clarity and vigor compared to earlier periods when English was still influenced by French. Wycliffe's prose, though unpolished, was pointed and vigorous. Mandeville's prose was straightforward, characterized by short and efficient sentences, lacking in decorative elements but still notable for its clarity. Malory introduced a more individualistic style, still unadorned but distinguished by its phrases and romantic flair. His prose had little influence on subsequent writers.